Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen, and it is Friday, August the 9th. 1 month from the next debate. But it appears that we don't have to wait a month to hear Donald going absolutely berserk, which he has. And it's even more than that, because he's normally, psychopathic, and we understand that. And we know that he's a damaged man. People say that, and that's true. I mean, these are all psychological evaluations done by people at afar, although his niece, she's had a chance to actually take his pulse, I guess. But the thing is, Donald's gone nuts. I mean, he was already nuts. And I think I know the reason, which really you probably wouldn't find hard to believe. He probably read that brand new Marquette poll, Marquette University. It's a good poll. It's an organization that is considered to be responsible, and their polls are believed. People think that when Marquette University takes a poll, that they're playing it straight. And what did they find? What a surprise. Kamala Harris is up by 8 points. 8 points. And believe me, if you're watching Fox, you haven't heard that. Or, if you're just hunkering down somewhere, trying to avoid hearing the bad news, okay, you won't know this. But I guarantee you, Donald knows. And because he knows, he doesn't know what to do. He is completely hysterical. So how do I know he's hysterical? This is so easy. I'm assuming that you've probably heard the helicopter story by now. Just for the heck of it. Joe? Yeah. Have you heard the helicopter? I can't say that I have. Wow. Okay. So maybe you haven't heard it. I don't know. But here's the helicopter story. I watched him tell it. I had no reason to believe that it wasn't true, except for the fact that it's Donald Trump. And nothing he says is ever true. So here's the story that he told. Surprised everybody hasn't heard it, but okay. It was right out here. It was part of that idiotic press conference he did. So he was on a helicopter with Willie Brown. Willie Brown is a politician in California, and he did have a relationship with Kamala Harris. Now, people get bent out of shape about it, and they say that she was sleeping her way up to some kind of successful position, but it's not it. Come on. It's not how it works. You don't get to be Attorney General of California because you slept with somebody. Anyway, Kamala had a relationship with Willie Brown. So Donald says that he was on a helicopter with Willie Brown. And he claims that the helicopter was crashing and that only in the last minute was it saved. And they had a very dangerous emergency landing at the end, but they survived. And then Donald says that while they were on this helicopter, that Willie Brown told Donald things about Kamala that Donald knows now because he got this directly from Willie Brown. They had gone out because they were surveying a part of California where they had a forest fire. Well, look, here's the funny part of this. None of it's true. Unbelievable. Who would make this up? So here's what actually happened. Donald was on a helicopter. He was. With Jerry Brown, the governor of California. And they were out surveying the forest fires, which, as you may remember, at the end, Donald came up with the brilliant idea that all they had to do was rake the leaves and they wouldn't have any more forest fires. But forget that. All this business about Willie Brown and the stories about Kamala Harris. And by the way, Gavin Newsom was also on this helicopter that day. This is totally bizarre. Newsom said there was no problem, not a threatened crash, not even some, the air wasn't unsettled. They just rode in the helicopter. Nothing. No Willie Brown and no stories about Kamala Harris. So this is all fabricated by Donald. I think you would want to ask, why is he doing this? Why make up stories like this? And certainly, if you're going to make up stories about helicopter rides with people that weren't there, I mean, wouldn't you want to do something to cover yourself so when you tell the story, you don't look like a complete moron when the people come forward and say, hey, this never happened? Well, doesn't bother Donald. Obviously, he's some kind of a psychopath. He's got serious trouble. But that's the reason, I think, that he's telling all these stories, that he's looking at these polls and realizes that Kamala is running away with this election. Look, you know that this enthusiasm is not made up. People are excited about her. You could say you don't know why. That would be okay. You could say you don't like her. But to start making up crazy helicopter stories, all you're asking for is to be made to look like a greater fool than you already are. I just don't understand it. Maybe he's freaked out because he's lost $7 billion at least on that idiotic company or whatever you want to call it that he's got. And he's only got about $3 billion left. Today was a good day. He only lost $20,000. It was only slightly down. Listen to what else Donald's saying. I mean, this is not normal. He says, we're on the verge of World War III. He says, it's going to start soon, and it's going to be worse than you can imagine. Well, first of all, how could World War III be worse than you would imagine? I mean, if World War III starts, I can't think of anything that would be worse because it would blow up the planet. But at any rate, he says World War III is about to start. And he's excited about it, too. You should hear how he says it. I mean, it's like, wow, look what I've got. World War III, and I can blame it on them. And everybody would be dead. And then the next thing is, he says that the economy and the stock market are in a complete free fall, and a crash will ensue worse than anything anybody's ever seen. Well, that is possible. First of all, it's always possible, but it's especially possible now. There are some numbers out here that I've talked about, and they're not good. And so what does that have to do with anything? What he should be doing is saying, look, if these things happen, this is what we have to do. Here's what the policy should be in order to address a collapsing stock market or an economy that was just coming apart at the seams. So what does he have to say about it? Here's what he says: that the Federal Reserve is no good. They don't know what they're doing. And he says, frankly, he says he knows far more than the Federal Reserve. And the reason, I mean, it's a better reason than the way he knows about nuclear weapons, because his uncle or his cousin or somebody was a scientist and he got it by osmosis. So he at least didn't say that one. But he is saying that he has made so much money in his life, a complete lie, as we know, and that he's so successful as a business person that he knows far more than all of these economists at the Federal Reserve. And so what he wants to do is he wants to change the way we run the Federal Reserve. He wants the Federal Reserve to be under the control of the president instead of being independent as it currently is. Well, I mean, I can tell you, in the history of the United States, we've had these enormous debates about a national bank and what we should allow, what we shouldn't, and why. And of course, you know, Hamilton and Jefferson, all these people weighed in on it because it's sort of a big deal. And then we came up with this, the Federal Reserve, in 1913. It was used to some benefit in 1932. Could have been better. And then, of course, Ben Bernanke did many things better when it came into the 2000s, and we needed help, lots of it. So Donald says he's better than everybody. You know, it's the old story. I alone can fix it. And in fact, a lot of people are saying this, that what's happening in the campaign is that Donald sees that everything is unraveling and he's going to lose big. And by the way, he says that he has special polls that show that he's winning by a landslide. Sure. Just like the special votes that he had in that last election. It's all nonsense. However, Donald says he's going to win by a landslide, and he just has nothing to worry about. And if that's true, my only question is, why is he so worried? Because this guy is scared. This guy is flipped out. The things that he is saying are ridiculous. Even to the extent that his VP genius has been calling Tim Walz a communist. And the thing about it is, this is a very old trick which, by the way, if you look at the date, first week of August, this is when 50 years ago, Richard Nixon had to quit. He quit because he had always done bad things and he got caught finally. But one of the things he was most famous for is when he ran against a woman, and her name was Helen Gahagan Douglas. And they were running in California for Congress. And Douglas, very, very smart lady. And she was supported by Eleanor Roosevelt. Sounds like a communist to me. Of course, there are people out there that feel that way. They think that's true. They don't think that's funny. They think that Eleanor was a communist, as well as Franklin. In any event, Nixon went berserk on Helen Gahagan Douglas, and he called her everything you can imagine, including a communist. And back then, early 1950s, when Joe McCarthy was still going, well, you could get away with that. It worked. No, I got you. Thank you very much, Joe. And we'll be over there in a little bit, very soon. So, yeah, this is the playbook. This is the Richard Nixon playbook. Call people communists. But I don't think in 2024 it's working. Maybe it is. Not on Earth 1, maybe on Earth 2. But I'll tell you this. I see that nice smile in the background there. So I'm not going to make you wait anymore. I know Jim is coming, and that's good too. So let's just get you on here, Amy. And that's okay. Hi, Amy Carter. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am great. I know you wanted to come into the studio, but something happened. So
I had surgery a week ago today, so a little slow. Excuse me. Let me close my door.
Okay, well, that's all right. We don't want that. We don't want that communist dog.
I've got 3 communist dogs.
Yeah, to cause any problems. And there, we got Jim in here too. That's very good. A little early, that's fine. I'm perfectly good with all of that. Anyway, you all know. And by the way, I got a scratchy voice today. I'm sorry. So but that's okay. We'll get through it. I talked about some of the things that Donald's up to right now. Let me ask you this, because I really am trying to learn, and maybe some other people can learn too. So one of the things that he did yesterday, which to me is just unbelievable, he made up a story. Do you all know the helicopter story?
I just heard about it today. I don't know a lot about it. I apologize.
So you know about it, Jim?
I do.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what then. Well, no, let me introduce it my way, and then you guys can have at it. So Donald got in a helicopter. He was surveilling the area in California where they had a forest fire. And while he was up there, he had a conversation with Willie Brown, who had an affair with Kamala Harris. And while they were up there, Willie Brown told Donald a lot of things about Kamala that are just really bad that we should all know about. Now, he remembers this vividly, he said, because the helicopter, when it was going to land, it was very erratic and it almost crashed. And so it was an emergency landing. But they all survived and everything worked out fine. There's only one problem. What's the problem, Jim? Do you know?
If I may, I believe what you're asking is it legit? I guess they're suggesting that Willie is saying that he was never had that conversation.
No, it's worse than that.
I'm not very sure. I don't know
Yeah.
the story. I really shouldn't speak too much
No,
on
it's
it.
okay. No, I'm going to say the story, and then you'll be able to speak perfectly. Willie Brown wasn't in the helicopter. Jerry Brown, the governor of California, was in the helicopter with Gavin Newsom and Donald, and they were surveilling the fire. Willie Brown was nowhere to be found. He wasn't in there. So he made it up. What do you think?
Well, I would certainly hope that's not the case. If it is, then obviously, yeah, he should be held accountable for that. But I really don't know much about it, so I can't speak to it too in depth. But I would think, in all honesty, if it wasn't Willie and it was this other person, maybe they did have some conversations about Kamala. Did this other gentleman? I mean, I'm sure he's very a well-known gentleman, so he probably held a lot of conversations with Kamala in the past. So maybe they did have a conversation. He just got the names wrong, which again isn't the most professional thing in the world, but it could happen. I mean, he's a very busy man. He's got a lot going on. He just got shot, so these things can happen. But I don't know a lot about it. So again, I would have to do a little more research. But yeah, I mean, if that is the case, then we do need to be held accountable when we.
Yeah. Well, Governor Brown and Gavin Newsom both say that the helicopter ride was no problem, nothing happened, it didn't almost crash, and nobody knew anything about Willie Brown. And anyway, they all support Kamala, so they weren't telling anything. Anyway,
but you're talking about
what do you think, Jim?
He said, she said. I don't hold a lot of stock in any of that anyway. I mean, everybody does a little bit of that.
You're talking about a helicopter full of Democrats. I don't believe a word they say. I mean, I believe it happened the way Trump said it happened. That's exactly what I believe.
Now, what if you find out, because they've got to have logs on as to who was in that helicopter. What if you find out that Donald wasn't with Willie Brown at all? Then what?
We could play what ifs all the time, but I don't
I think you're going to find it out.
Yeah, I mean, in time, and when that information does come out, maybe we can speak more on it. But as of right now, I don't think anybody has enough information to really.
I mean, that there's going to be nothing but lies spread from here on out for the next 3 months. They're going to do anything they can to knock Trump down. I mean, we know that. We know the Democrats lie. I mean, it's a common trait for a Democrat. But sorry, Mark, but I mean.
Can I start off by giving you a little bit of history of my
Amy, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so I used to be a Democrat. I'm from the St. Louis area, but on the Illinois side. So I'm from Illinois. I currently live in Indiana. I also lived in Florida for some time, so I've kind of experienced both sides of the fence when it comes to the politics of different states and how they play out. But what I can tell you is that I grew up in a very strict Democratic family. My grandfather was a huge financial backer in Illinois for some important Democrats. And then my husband was a union pipe fitter in the area. So, we obviously voted Democrat for a long time.
Sure.
I voted for Obama the first time. The second time I did not. And I think that's about when I started to change my beliefs, my opinions on government. I was also getting a little bit older and paying a little more attention. I think when we're younger, we do what we're told, what our parents do, or what our family tells us to do, or what our employers tell us to do. But as we get older, we pay a little more attention, we learn a little more, we become our own selves, and we start to vote and pay attention to things that we can believe in, that we experience. And so I did change. I became a Republican a little before Trump came in. I am obviously one of those people that believed at the time that I just did not want another politician in office because I didn't trust any of them anymore.
What did
So
you think they were doing wrong?
I just don't trust the government anymore. And I am a huge American patriot. I love America. Firefighter, EMT. I had 2 children in the military. Like I am a huge I have a huge love for this country. And I want nothing but the best. We live in the best country in the world. And everything we do in this country affects the world. I think we can, a lot of other countries also, they rely on what happens here with our government. And so it concerns me that I just see a lot of really bad things happening in the world these days. And I just, I feel like, I just feel like the Democrats of today are very different from the Democrats 30 years ago. I've seen a huge switch, a huge sway in everything, and I just don't feel comfortable with it anymore. And I don't trust our government. I have no trust whatsoever in our government. And we the people, all of us, we need to stop being so divisive. We need to come together and we need to remind them who runs this country because we're not running it. We have no say. Not you, not me, no one.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to show, with the last election, whether you believe it was rigged or not, there was some really tricky business going on there. And I wouldn't say
How do you know that?
I don't. I feel it. And
Okay.
I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist. I'm not, but
Okay.
I do have I just have my opinions on it. I
Sure.
really do
Sure.
think there is some tricky business. And listen, I'm not one to say it doesn't go on both sides, but I don't know. I just have a little more comfort on the Republican side these days.
Yeah. And by the way, just to give you a little background on me, I was 50 years ago, about 50, 60 years ago, 55 years ago. Okay. Being accurate. I was a radical leftist hippie with hair longer than yours, nice beard, still got a nice beard, but no more hair. And I was anti-war, against the Vietnam War, worked on civil rights things, and I was part of the draft resistance, helped people to resist the draft and either leave the country or whatever they had to do to stay out of the war. So that's what I was doing when I was young.
So
Now,
then you wouldn't ever use it against someone who wasn't in the military as someone who wants to become a president. You wouldn't say, oh, they dodged the draft, therefore they could never be, a candidate. Or would that still be something you would hold against them?
oh no. I listen, but the only
That's not
difference.
an issue.
That's not an issue for me. But of course, there is one issue for me, which is you heard what I just told you. I was a draft resistor.
Mhm.
I was anti-war. I was a hippie with long hair. I mean, I was involved and engaged in that radical left politics of 1968 to 72 when I went to UCLA. But let me also say, all these years later, I have grown up. Right, Jim? No, all these years later, I'm probably just a little more radical than I was then.
More radical. Okay.
More radical
More
left.
different radical.
Oh,
More
he is.
radical left.
More maybe
More
different.
No, not different,
More?
really. Nah.
He's extreme left.
I'm just
Extreme
teasing
left.
you. No, I'm extreme left, and I was extreme left then. So what really I'm wondering about, Amy, and I kid, but what I'm really wondering about is how do you feel that the Democrats are different today than they were then? Because I don't exactly see it. And I think that most of these Democrats then and now see themselves in the tradition of Franklin Roosevelt. What do you think?
Well, I would have to say that as a former Democrat, I felt like back then, and we won't have to talk about how old I am, but I was born in 74, so I may not have been able to experience some of the things you experienced. But even in the 90s, when I was coming up and getting involved in things and running some of the campaign trail with some other Democrats, for me personally, I felt like the Democratic Party was a little more understanding and, like you said, a little more free-willed and not violent, not just. But now I don't feel that way, and that's kind of what changed me, is that I saw a sway in the way that in violence, in just, you're the anti-war, but yet look at all these riots, look at all of the, just the
Well,
disdain.
well, and Amy, look, back in 90s, when, 80s and 90s, when we were growing up, most of the time you didn't even know who Democrats were or who was a Republican, because it wasn't a big deal.
It
But
just
Really?
wasn't as embraced.
everybody got along. But
Are
it's
you
such
sure
an
about? Are you
extreme.
sure?
I
Yeah,
felt that
absolutely.
way. I felt that way personally
And
in my experience.
I mean,
I mean,
look at the
I was
Democrats
30
in
years
these
old
cities.
then, and I can tell you that there were some pretty strong differences in feelings against each other. There were.
But nothing like today.
And
I
it
mean,
just
you got
didn't feel
Probably not.
Democrats.
The internet has
right.
You
opened
got
up.
Democrats telling
Yeah.
Maybe
people
that's
to
what it
burn
is.
down cities. I mean, what happened a few
That's what
years
changed
ago
me.
was absolutely insane.
Okay, but
And
they
here,
burned
let me
down.
ask you,
They
Mark.
burned down Watts in 1965. Believe
Okay,
me, it was
okay, but
burned all the
okay,
way to
well,
the ground.
how many cities did they burn down recently in the last couple of years? What was it?
Well,
6,
I mean,
7,
and
8,
look at
9?
Minneapolis, who, we are the Democratic VP
Sure.
now.
I want to
Waltz.
ask you a question, Mark, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
go ahead. No, of course.
Your candidate now for president, Kamala Harris, was part of the biggest part of the big lie about Joe Biden's health that's all came out,
Where, where
to
is our
tell
president?
everybody that, he was okay to run for president. And they were all lying to the American people. And it's all coming out now. I think
Well,
a lot of us knew it back then, but, they're coming out now that they were lying about his health. And then when he had to step aside, it right there just said, just a month earlier, weeks earlier, they were saying, oh, no, he's totally fine.
we're the conspiracy theorists. We're the one
Exactly.
making up that he's
What's your
got this
thoughts
mental
about that?
decline. And he didn't step aside. Let's be clear. I mean, even Obama went after him and said, "You need to move on out, buddy." And he fought it until he couldn't fight it anymore. And where the heck is he now? He's still, if he is still our president, where is he?
Well, he's been actually out talking with Kamala and with others. He's been speaking.
We haven't even
And-
seen her
but-
either.
No. They're both out there a lot. But let me say this. Joe had problems that were obvious, and the problems were he's old. I mean, who didn't know that Joe Biden was old, right?
But do you think it was okay for them to lie about his health?
Well, wait a second. I'm not sure they lied about anything. You saw it and I saw it. The man had a problem. But listen to this.
But they were
Why-
saying he didn't.
Listen,
Okay, go ahead.
while he was having his problem, he negotiated a deal with Vladimir Putin to bring all those people back from Russia.
Did
He said
he?
that last week. He said that last week. Mark,
Did he?
I've done more research
Do
on
we
that.
believe
guy
that he's
can't
actually
order-
been running things? I
He
don't
can't
know.
even get his order right at McDonald's. How do you think he really negotiated that deal?
I mean, I'm not so sure that I think he's the one that's actually been running things. In
No,
my opinion,
absolutely not.
Kamala and the team has been running things.
I don't
I
think
think that it
Kamala
was-
has. I
It
think
didn't
I
come
think it
out
was other
until,
people behind the scenes. But
well, yeah, I think there are too. There's a lot of people behind the scenes. I think, we have to be honest that, and then she waited until after. So my thing is with this whole situation is they tried, the Democrats, when I say they, I mean the Democrats, I apologize for being vague, but they said we were crazy. There was nothing wrong with him. He's perfectly fine. And then after he did his debate, oh, okay, maybe there's something wrong with him.
yeah,
Maybe you guys and they wouldn't say it this way. Maybe you guys were right. But here's the thing, if he can't do the job, he needs to step down, which means Kamala is
Yeah.
president right now.
I
But if
don't
he
think
can
that.
do the job,
I don't think that's what. I don't think that's what they're saying. I think that what they're saying, and in fact, I'm going to tell you what they're saying. They're saying that it's apparent, as old as he is, that he cannot tell the story of what it is that he's trying to accomplish. It's gotten beyond him. We've heard him. He's struggling up there. He can't do it.
No,
And if he can't do it,
which means he should not be president right now.
well, wait a
He shouldn't
second.
be making any decisions.
All these people, all these heads of countries in Europe that meet with him say he's fine in their meetings. He just can't.
saying that?
The head of Germany, the head of England, the head of France. They all say he's fine. They've met with him. They met with him last week.
Oh, you mean France? The country which I've been to, France. I love France. Don't get me wrong.
So do I. I was there too. It's very nice. Yeah.
You're talking about the ones that are hosting the Olympics right now that just had that huge debacle. Yeah, I can't imagine they would want to.
I mean, you could have debacles. I mean, everybody can have a debacle. I mean, look, I'm just saying that maybe there's a slightly different way of looking at all of this that still says that Joe Biden shouldn't be president. I think it's a good thing that Joe is out and Kamala's in. And listen to this. And part of it is because he's old. But here's the thing. Kamala has lit this country on fire with enthusiasm. I understand, not you guys, but you understand if people are excited by her, that's how democracy works.
Explain to me why she was the least back whenever she was running. Back when she was running, she had the lowest numbers as far as
in the primaries. She was
not anymore.
Well, because how did that change? The only choice out there.
That's because of how this was handled. If it was handled properly, and the American people were given the right to choose who's being chosen as the next president candidate for the Democrats, I don't think they would have chosen her.
Well, let me ask you this. You don't think anybody's manipulating me, do you, Jim?
No, I think you're just crazy.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Listen. No, that's an important point. I've been crazy since I was a kid, and I'm crazy now. Okay? I've got very specific political ideas, and nobody could manipulate me. So when I tell you, and by the way, I love the country too. I'm not an agent of another country. So all I'm saying is I want the best for the United States, and you want the best. And so all I'm thinking is that if people that we're watching don't behave in ways that are acceptable, then maybe we should have some concern. But I want you to think about that for a second, because I got some ads I got to do here. And after we do a little business, we'll be right back. All right?
Okay.
Terrific. So the first thing I want to do is encourage people to go to Wendy's for dinner. And believe me, I don't care if you're a radical leftist or way on the right. It doesn't matter. Wendy's is a great place to eat. They've got wings. They've got hamburgers and cheeseburgers and patty melts. Everybody loves their wings, by the way. They're really unique. They're great. They've got smoked meats, really good smoked meats. They've got pizza, salads, the best drinks. Everybody loves them. Now, for me, I love the iced tea, but hey, there are other drinks too. You can choose. Wendy's it's a great place to eat in Chesterfield Valley. And now for me, Amy.
Yes.
I've already told this to Jim last week, but I love the baby back ribs. the baby back ribs, and onion rings. Love it. So this is a great place to eat. And after you've eaten all this great stuff, because you don't want people to think that you're ridiculous, see, instead of eating more, you just leave, get in your car, and you drive out to Defiance, Missouri, and they got another Wendy's out there, and you can go do the whole thing all over again. And they'll think that you're just a hungry guy or woman. Yeah. Okay. So that's Wendy's. Ben and his wife have done a great job, built a great restaurant, and we want you to try Wendy's. Now, if you're interested in jewelry, my very, very close friends, Al and his son, AJ, are at 4506 Hampton, and that is Jewels on Hampton. And they've got cases and cases and cases of jewelry in that store. You can go through there and look at their jewelry. You can bring jewelry to sell to them, and you can sell and buy and make deals. Believe me, Al's a great guy, and he really wants to take care of his customers. You'll love him. He's also a great jewelry designer. He designs jewelry creatively, or he'll do things that you want. All in all, it's a great jewelry store, 4506 Hampton in St. Louis, and they even fix watches. But I have a feeling you can't fix my voice. But don't worry, I'm going to make it the next 20 minutes. We'll be fine. It's the old Bill Clinton trick. Okay. The third thing is the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton. And you can see me in my suit here. And I can tell you that over the years, I've always believed that when you're going to go out and cause a lot of trouble, it's good to wear a suit and a tie, because then you don't get as much trouble for it. People aren't as upset. They think you're, a really nice person. They don't realize that you're radical left. They don't know that, so. And by the way, I don't burn anything down. I never have, Amy. So, yeah, you don't have to worry about that. But the thing is that you can get beautiful suits and shirts and shoes and ties. I mean, I got a tie on right now. I can tell you this nice blue pattern, and it's silk, and this is a $5 tie. $5. Nobody can believe it. And it's at Forsyth and Central in Clayton. They've been there for 30 years. They've sold these ties for $5 for 30 years, and they still do. And then they even have overcoats in the summer, which people would say, who needs an overcoat in the summer? But you're going to need it in the winter. So go buy it at a low price, because they're going to raise the price when the snow comes. But at any rate, there it is. St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton, Forsyth and Central, 30 years. Okay. So, what do you guys think? Have I convinced you? You're all radical leftists now?
Not quite yet.
Well,
I have a few more things to discuss.
What do you think? What do you think Donald's going to do for you? Give me that one. I'd love to hear that one.
Okay.
Exactly what he did before.
So
back when I used to be able to afford to feed my kids and had $1.80 gas.
I mean, do you want to talk about inflation, immigration? Do you want to talk about the energy crisis?
Well, wait, you got a good one. Let's talk about immigration.
Okay.
So if I tell you that the people who come across those borders in the South are involved in less crime than anybody in the United States, that they are a very low crime group, and that we, white people like us that grew up here, born here, we're the ones that are committing the crime. If I told you that, and if I proved it to you, what would you think?
First thing I would say is fentanyl. The second thing I would say is look who's crossing the border. It's not women and children and elderly looking for amnesty, looking for a safer place. It's all middle-aged men from not only Mexico, but from across all the countries in the world.
Venezuela.
I mean, they are invading us. It's an infestation of middle-aged men who are at military age level. I would say that maybe we haven't seen the worst yet, but fentanyl, if you want to talk about that's what I would say. Those are the first two things I would say.
Is
Okay.
everybody that crossed the border a bad person? Absolutely
No.
not. But I mean, we got what, 20? Last week I said 1,000, and what I meant million, but we've had what, 20 million people, I think is the
I
number.
think
since
at last
Biden put
I
in?
checked, they claimed 11 point something million, but I'm
Right.
I'd
It's
venture
more
to
like
say
20
probably
million is
double
what they
that.
actually
Yeah,
said, but-
because there's
Well,
a
what
lot
about-
of ways.
What about all the people that are DACA kids that grew up here and that work here and love this country?
Well, you know, I'm all for immigration. I think that's what
Okay.
this country is about. I don't think anyone truly has anything against legal immigration.
Absolutely.
And I think that we can't pretend that these people being bussed in, planed in, we know why they're being brought into this country. And you can talk about, as far as listen, if I go to vote, are they going to ask me for my ID?
Sure.
Are they going to ask an illegal immigrant if they have an ID?
Sure.
They're saying they're not. That's
No,
one of the things they're trying to
ask
do with.
they ask people for their IDs. Yeah.
But
They
they're
don't
trying
ever
to
ask
get
me
away
for
with
my
that
ID.
right now. They're saying that if you are if you are an immigrant in this country, regardless of your status, whether you're legal or not, if you don't have an identification, they're trying to pass it. I pray they don't. That they can vote. We know why that is.
Well, let me ask you this.
We know why that is.
If they passed a law saying that everybody had to have an ID, which I really think people do have to have IDs, but let's
They
say,
don't.
As of
Look,
right now,
hang on.
No.
Well, I've never voted without an ID, but at any rate, let me ask you this.
you're white.
Would you be okay if the United States government helped all the people that can't get an ID to get one?
No, because they did not come here legally.
No. What if it's an old lady?
She's not here legally. There's an old lady in France that wants.
What if it's an old lady in the inner city who was born in the United States, has lived here for 75, 80 years, and she needs help because she doesn't have any car. She has to take the bus.
Why?
She needs help to go vote and to get an ID. Would you help her?
Is she
Legal.
She's legal.
Born here.
If she can prove she was born here, then yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I personally would take her to help her.
Well, you see? Okay. See, we agree on
But if
that.
she's here illegally and she cannot.
No. Forget that.
Then I will not.
Look,
Excuse me, I will not.
nobody wants illegal people to vote. And you know what the Secretary of States all say? They don't.
I don't believe that. I think
Okay.
that, why else is it being allowed? Why else has it in the last 3 years been allowed? That so millions and millions of illegal immigrants, I can't say the A word, are in this country.
Yeah.
And Biden wants them to vote because he wants that vote. Well, he doesn't because he's not going to do it anymore.
No, none of these people want anybody to vote that's not legal. And I got people here on the chat, DRC and Greg, and they're having a ball over here telling me that sort of what you are. Okay, they don't like
Yes,
my
Greg.
opinion on the IDs and
Certainly do.
that here's one that they're bringing up. We discussed this the other day. You know who Maduro is in Venezuela?
I do not. I apologize.
Okay. So he just ran for president of Venezuela and he lost. But he claimed he won and he took over the government. So if you don't know about it, you're going to have to read before we can talk about that one.
Yes, absolutely.
But check that out. because Donald sort of idolizes the guy, and the reason apparently is because he was able to do what Donald couldn't do, which was to take over our government even after you lose the election.
When you say take over the government, I mean, I think most people that understand how the government works, a president doesn't have the all saying, he has to go through the Senate. He has to go through certain, so nobody can do that. Not even
You're
Congress,
right.
not even
That's
president.
You're talking
that's
about
why
a
he couldn't do it.
dictatorship as
You're
opposed
right.
to a government.
You're right. That's why he couldn't do it.
But
He tried.
well, but I don't think that he was trying to take over the government. I think he was trying to say that there was a lot of errors in our voting system,
Which there was.
which I personally believe there was. I mean, Georgia just recently found.
We got 4 mail-in ballots sent to our house that we didn't request, and we always vote in person. Now we tore them up and threw them away. I took pictures of them, and I actually posted them on Facebook 4 years ago. But we got 4 mail-in ballots sent to our house that we didn't request.
And you can't use them.
I could have used them.
No, that's what I'm saying. You could not have used them.
Okay, well, anyway, mail-in ballots, you're obviously not showing your ID, right?
Well, you are when you go in and request the ballot. Yes.
You don't have to go in there. You can request a ballot online.
Well, I've never gotten one. Okay, I've never gotten one online, and that would be okay with me too, by the way. But because
I go down in person and vote.
They check.
I go down in person. They ask my name. They pull out a thing because I'm registered. They hand it to me. I go back in and I do my thing, but not once ever have I had to use an ID, nor has any person I've ever spoken with but you.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Amy, have
voted
you ever had
since
to use an ID?
since 1972, and I always use an ID. I mean, they asked for an ID, and I wouldn't argue with them. I mean, what am I going to say? No, I won't give you my ID. They asked me for it.
That's what I'm going to do this year if they ask me for one, and I'm just going to say I'm not from this country, and then I'm going to vote 15 times if they let me.
Well, you know what they're going to do? They're going to call the police.
Well, right, as they should, right? As they should.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, our police really don't. They don't have. A lot of them are told not to do anything when it comes to the illegal immigrants. Leave them alone.
I'm amazed that you believe that. I really am.
Well,
but
I mean,
I know you do, but
well, to a certain extent, I do. But I am being a bit facetious. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that. Sure.
Yeah, we played a clip on here the other day where Ronald Reagan said that we need to open the doors to this country and let everybody in and just keep letting them in, and that they actually grow our country, make it creative,
and
make it younger, more vibrant.
And we do, but there's a vetting. There's a system in place for our own safety, and it's a necessity, because if we don't know who's coming in our country, we don't know how to track them down when they do something bad. We don't know how to hold them accountable when somebody gets murdered. We don't have fingerprints. We don't have. I mean, there's a lot.
Somehow I got kicked out here.
Uh-oh.
No, we're all here.
I see you, Jim.
Yeah, we're all here. Anyway, I'm just saying, what if we just vet them when they come in, which we should. Yes. I've said, listen to this, Amy. Tell me if you like this. I've said, you know the Peace Corps, right? Okay. So what if we send 1 million high school graduates down to the border, and when the people come across, we attach these young kids to families that come in, and they help these families to figure out how to fill out documents, to get cards, to fit in here, to become American citizens, to get jobs. I mean,
in a perfect world, great, but I think there's a lot of room for error there. You can't just have high school kids doing it, because
they did all kinds of stuff in the Peace Corps. They did it in Africa. If they could do it in Africa, they could do it here.
Africa's a little different than the United States of America.
More dangerous, don't you think?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, so I'm saying send them down to the border, and you're going to I'm not
Or
saying
just
don't.
consider doing it the way they were supposed to, just like the lady I was saying in France as an example, who wants to come live in our country. She's got to go through how many years of being,
Well, don't
all
make
the
it
red
years.
tape? Well, maybe it shouldn't be years, but it definitely needs to be something, because we need to know who's coming in this country.
Okay, I'm
And,
with you.
they
I
can't
want to
just
know
walk
who they are.
across. It's not
I agree
fair.
with you. I
And,
want to know who they are.
Right, right. I mean, for our own safety, for the people that are already in this
Okay.
country, paying taxes, signing up for the military, doing the right things. And like I said, I mean, try going to Canada. If you want to you want to move into Canada, look how long their system is.
Okay, but I'm just saying this. Let's open the border.
We're not saying no immigration.
No,
We're
no.
saying legal.
I'm saying let's open up the border. Just open it up.
It's open.
No, it's not. Okay.
It is.
But let's open the border and let's set up a vetting system and let's be sure that we know all the people who come in here. I mean, we take a census.
Sometimes that takes years to figure out, because
Hey,
I don't
people
know.
lie about who they are.
Hey,
We do a
Mark,
census on 320 million people and we find where they are. Go ahead, Jim.
can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
I had to use my phone today because my laptop blew up. So every
Right.
time my phone rings, it kicks me out. So
Okay.
I was reading some of your people talking on here, and one of the guys asked you a question that I thought was kind of interesting. But
Go ahead.
what if some of these illegals wanted to set up in your front yard? Would you be okay with that?
Well, obviously not, for a very simple reason. Nobody would be okay with it, and nobody is.
So then
Nobody
where do they
does
do
that. That's not what we do, and there's nowhere in the United States where anybody's doing that. And
Well,
we
they are.
and what? Wait, I don't mind if my taxes help to support people to get a place where they can live and where they can find a job and they can fit into our country, because it's going to benefit all of us. Go ahead, Amy.
Pick me. Okay, I'm going to give you a little history on me. So I had a child very young, and
Okay.
I relied on the welfare system for a few
Okay.
years. I went to school. I did the things I was supposed to do to get off of the welfare system. I
Gotcha.
received $300 to pay for my rent, and I received a couple $100s for groceries every month. Now, this was back in the 90s, so it's, inflation's different, but that was the hardest thing for me to do as an American, was to get accepted into that program, to get help for me and my child. And I get it. I'm accountable for my actions. I needed the help to finish school. I didn't want to be, one of the dropouts that never did anything with my life, and I didn't want to be one of those people. So I did the things.
And we want to help people like that. But go
But
ahead.
it was very little, and it was designed not to let me get off of it. So I
Okay,
had.
well, it should be more.
I agree.
Yeah.
But if you look at what's being given to the illegal immigrants at this point, some of it's more than what our veterans are getting. Some of it's more than our own country people are getting. And I just think that as such a slap in the face. And
Well, the problem, by the way, with that one is, Amy, I'm going to tell you that we don't give them anything. But I know, there are people who believe that we do. But I'm just saying this. I know from people that I respect and that tell me what I need to know. Not on the news, but people who they don't do that. That doesn't happen.
Here in Chicago. I live here in Chicago.
Sure.
And I see what's happening, and I see how.
And sorry, but I know this, they're almost out of time, but
Yeah.
you've seen what happened in Chicago recently when they gave out, what was it, $80 million to all these illegals and did not help any of the inner city people. And that's the reason why they started that group of African Americans for Trump.
It's turning. I am seeing it with my own eyes. These people are being pushed out of their own communities because the buildup of the immigration, the destruction of the communities alone. And you look at inflation because of it. I mean, we are spending so much money on these illegal immigrants. And, you can argue all day long about, well, who's going to pick the strawberries and who's going to be the hotel employees. that's not where we're going with this. We're talking about people that aren't working. And if you go around Chicago, anywhere in Chicago, because I live near Chicago, you will see exactly where our money's going. It's infested with drugs and illegal activity, and I can't even walk around anymore. It's so
Okay.
scary.
Well, you two, this is to be continued.
Yes, please.
And first of all, this is brought to you by St. Louis Suit Company and Wenty's and Jules on Hampton. And I'm Mark Kaysen, and this is Showdown. Good night.
Good night.